The scariest ghost on Alcatraz isn't an inmate. It's the guard who refused to leave his post, even after death. Tourists see him. Rangers hear his boots. And if you ever walk past cell 1-4D, he walks behind you. Alcatraz, the Rock, a place built to hold the worst of the worst. Cut off by freezing waters, carved by isolation, and drenched in stories people whisper but never want to believe. But late at night, long after the last ferry leaves, the island wakes up. The empty cell blocks feel to awake. The air grows colder than the bay. And sometimes, if the fog gets thick enough, something walks the halls that isn't supposed to walk anymore. Tonight, I'm going to tell you a version of the Alcatraz haunting that almost no one knows. A version only a handful of rangers will admit is real. A story about a man who died with his eyes open, and a guard who still refuses to clock out. So sit back, and whatever you do, don't answer the whisper behind you. Elias Ward had been a park ranger on Alcatraz Island for 7 years. He'd guided thousands of tourists through the rusted corridors and echoing cell blocks, reciting practiced lines about escape attempts, infamous inmates, and the unforgiving waters of the San Francisco Bay. He enjoyed the job. Mostly, the island was quiet in a way the mainland never was, a quiet he'd always mistaken for peace. What Elias didn't enjoy were the ghost stories. Every day, without fail, some visitor would ask about the ghost in cell 1-4D, or about the strange footsteps in the corridor known as Broadway, or about the guard who appeared in old-fashioned uniform, then vanished around a corner. Elias always smiled politely and corrected them. Alcatraz has history, he'd say, not hauntings. He believed that firmly, until the night the island changed him forever. It began on a fog-heavy Thursday evening in early October. Elias had stayed late to file maintenance reports. By 10:15 p.m., only he and one other ranger remained on the island, the rest having taken the last ferry back. The silence was thick, like the fog had swallowed all sound. As Elias walked down the main corridor toward D Block, he heard something, a soft tap-tap-tap echoing from ahead. He froze. It sounded like someone flicking a finger against metal. Tap-o-tap, tap. He lifted his flashlight, sweeping it down the hall. Nothing moved. No shadows shifted. Yet the tapping continued, growing more rhythmic, almost deliberate. Elias exhaled slowly. Probably the pipes again. He whispered to himself. But then the tapping stopped abruptly, and something else began. A whisper. Low, male, right behind him. Don't leave me in the dark. Elias spun around, heart hammering, but the corridor remained empty. The fog seemed to thicken inside the building, curling along the floor like something alive. He backed away, forcing himself to breathe. This is just acoustics, he told himself. Old prison, old metal, echoes. But the whisper came again, louder, as if spoken directly into his ear. He's coming. Elias bolted. He didn't stop running until he burst out of the cell block and into the open air. His lungs burned. The fog, cold and damp, clung to his skin like fingers. And then, in the stillness, he saw a silhouette. A tall figure standing at the far end of the yard. dressed in an old-fashioned guard's uniform from the 1940s. The figure stood perfectly still, head slightly tilted, as if watching him. Elias opened his mouth to speak or scream, but the fog rolled between them, and the figure dissolved like smoke carried by the wind. That night, Elias told no one what he saw. He erased it from his reports. He convinced himself stress had played tricks on him. But deep inside, something whispered a truth he didn't want to accept. Alcatraz wasn't quiet. It was waiting. For 2 days, Elias avoided D Block entirely. He led tours through a block and the mess hall, skipped ghost-related questions, and dismissed his own memory like a bad dream. But on the 3rd day, a tourist changed everything. She was an elderly woman with soft gray eyes and a voice that trembled slightly when she spoke. As her group passed the entrance to D Block, she stopped walking, her gaze fixed on the shadow-choked corridor ahead. "Do they still keep him in there?" she asked Elias. Elias paused. "Ma'am, no one has been held here for decades." She shook her head. "Not the inmates. Him, the one who screams at night." Her words slid under his skin like ice. After the tour ended, Elias found her waiting for him outside. She introduced herself as Mabel Carson, daughter of a former Alcatraz guard. "My father spoke about this place until the day he died," she said, "and he always warned us, if you ever hear a man screaming from solitary, don't answer him." Elias's throat tightened. Why? Because the screams aren't coming from the living. She told him a story he'd heard before, but never this version. In 1946, an inmate named Victor Stroud had been thrown into cell 1 for D for fighting with another prisoner. Stroud was known for his violent temper, his refusal to bend to authority, and his obsession with proving he'd been wronged. But what Mabel said next wasn't part of any official record. My father swore Stroud wasn't alone that night. He said there was something in that cell with him, something the prisoners called the Watchman. Elias frowned. The Watchman? A spirit older than the prison, Mabel whispered. The island once held a military fort, long before the Federal Penitentiary. Soldiers died here. Some were executed here. And one never moved on. She told him Victor Stroud screamed for nearly 6 hours straight, begging guards to remove the man in the corner. The guards ignored him. In the morning, they found Stroud dead, throat bruised, eyes wide, spine twisted unnaturally, yet no one else had been inside. But here's the part people don't know. Mabel said quietly, "My father saw Stroud's ghost years later. He said the spirit wasn't angry. He was afraid. Stroud wasn't the one haunting the prison." Elias swallowed. "You think something else is here?" Mabel nodded. "And I think it's watching you." Before Elias could respond, she placed a folded piece of paper in his hand. He wanted someone to see this someday. When she left, Elias opened the paper. It was brittle with age, edges yellowed. At the top, scribbled in trembling handwriting, were the words, "If you hear him walking the halls, don't look at him. Don't answer him. Don't let him know you hear." Beneath it was a drawing, a tall figure in an old guard uniform, head tilted, eyes hollow. the same figure Elias had seen in the fog. The watchman, and he was just beginning. Elias returned to Alcatraz that night, the note burning a hole in his pocket. He needed answers, not stories, not rumors, but something concrete. Something he could hold up to the light to prove the world hadn't tilted into madness. He waited until the last ferry departed, leaving him alone on the island. The fog thickened early, rolling across the courtyard like slow-moving tides. His flashlight beam cut a narrow path as he approached D-Block. Every instinct begged him to turn around. He went anyway. Inside, the air was colder than the rest of the prison, a deep, harsh cold that felt unnatural for October. The iron doors loomed like silent monoliths. Elias stopped in front of cell 1 for D. The open doorway yawned like a mouth. He stepped inside. Pitch black swallowed him immediately. Even with his flashlight, the beam seemed to shrink, as though the darkness were alive, pressing inward. Then came the first sound, a faint shuffle behind him. He whipped around. Nothing. Another sound, a whisper that slithered across the floor. He's here. Elias's breath hitched. He raised the flashlight again, sweeping it across the cell. The beam flickered, dimmed, and then died. The darkness swallowed everything. Then hands, cold, skeletal, brushed his shoulder. Elias staggered backward, slamming into the wall. "Who's there?" he shouted. A voice answered. Not shouted, whispered, yet so close it felt like it was inside him. "Don't let him find me." Elias froze. It wasn't the watchman's voice. It was Victor Stroud. A faint glow appeared in the corner of the cell. A pale outline of a man crouched in fear, spectral fingers covering his face. Elias's breath fogged the air. "You're Stroud?" Elias whispered. The figure slowly raised its head. Its eyes were empty, hollow voids. When it spoke, its voice cracked with centuries of fear. "He's coming." A new sound broke through, heavy footsteps echoing down the corridor. Slow, deliberate, boots on concrete. The watchman. Stroud recoiled, pressing himself into the corner, face twisted in terror. "Don't answer him," he hissed. "He listens through the dark. He hunts the ones who hear him." The footsteps grew louder. Elias forced himself to speak. "Why me? What does he want?" But Stroud shook his head violently. "He guards the island. He punishes the restless. He keeps us here." Elias stepped back. His pulse roared in his ears. The footsteps stopped right outside the cell. Silence thickened. Then a low voice, cold and ancient, filled the doorway. "Step out." Elias pressed himself against the back wall. His lungs refused to expand. The air seemed to collapse around him. The watchman's shadow stretched across the cell floor, impossibly tall, neck bent at the unnatural angle Elias had seen days earlier. "Step out." Stroud's ghost trembled violently, whispering frantically. "Don't answer him. Please, don't answer." Elias ran. He barreled out of the cell, crashing past the shadow. The cold intensified, burning his skin like ice. He stumbled through the hallway, the footsteps pounding behind him. He didn't look back. He didn't dare. D-Block woke up that night, and it would not be silent again. Elias fled the prison interior and didn't stop running. until he reached the lighthouse platform overlooking the black waters of the bay. His hands shook violently. His breath tore from his lungs. The island was alive, and something on it wanted him. He fumbled with his phone, calling the only person who might understand, Mabel Carson. She answered on the first ring. I felt it, she said before he could speak. Something shifted. Mabel, Elias gasped. Stroud. I saw him. And the watchman, you need to leave the island. She interrupted sharply. Now, I can't. Elias said, if I leave, he'll still be here. I need to know what he is. Mabel hesitated. Then she sighed heavily. There's something I didn't tell you. Something my father discovered. She explained that long before Alcatraz became a federal prison, the island was used by the U.S. military as a disciplinary barracks. Soldiers who disobeyed orders were held there, some executed, some forgotten in solitary confinement. And one soldier, in particular, never left. His name was Corporal Edwin Holt. Mabel said, a guard, not a prisoner. Elias froze. A guard, yes. He was known for being merciless. Punishment was his religion. He beat prisoners, deprived them of food, kept them in darkness for days. The military eventually dismissed him, but it was too late. The prisoners hated him. One night, several of them broke free of their cells and killed him in the corridor outside solitary. Elias swallowed. And that created the watchman? No, Mabel whispered. Holt created himself. She explained that Holt died vowing he would never abandon his post. He believed discipline was eternal, that suffering kept men obedient. When the federal prison took over, guards began reporting a shadowy figure patrolling the corridors. And prisoners locked in solitary screamed about the guard with no face. He sees prisoners everywhere, Mabel said. Even now, even you. Elias's chest tightened. Why me? Because you heard him, she said. And when someone hears him, Holt believes they're disobeying. He thinks you're a prisoner trying to escape. A cold breeze swept across the platform. Elias turned slowly. A figure stood at the far end. Tall, rigid, head tilted, uniform torn from another century. The watchman. Mabel's voice trembled on the phone. Elias, run. But Elias didn't run this time. He stepped forward. Edwin Holt. He called out, voice shaking. I know who you are. The figure froze. Elias continued, forcing strength into his voice. You were a guard once, but this isn't your prison anymore. The watchman's shadow stretched unnaturally, crawling across the ground like liquid darkness. A whisper rose from the air, cold and sharp as steel. I never left my post. Elias took a step back. You have too. The watchman tilted his head further, joints crackling. You hear me? That makes you mine. The fog shifted violently, curling into the shape of a corridor round Elias. The island was not letting him go. Elias backed onto the lighthouse stairs as the watchman advanced, boots scraping the concrete in slow, deliberate steps. The fog thickened until it swallowed the edges of the world, leaving only the two of them locked in a suspended moment between past and present. Edwin, Elias repeated, voice cracking but determined, you're still doing the job they fired you for. The watchman paused. His head twitched. Elias continued, "You're not guarding prisoners anymore. Just shadows, memories, ghosts of the men you hurt." The fog trembled, as if the island itself recoiled. Suddenly, a scream ripped across the yard, Victor Stroud's ghostly voice echoing like it was caught in every wall. "He's lying. He'll never stop. He made us watch every night." The scream cut off abruptly. The watchman turned his head sharply toward the sound. Elias seized his chance. "Don't you see?" he shouted. "They're terrified of you. Not because you're protecting anything, but because you won't let them go." The watchman's form flickered. The fog around him pulsed like a heartbeat. For the first time, Elias felt the faintest ripple of uncertainty from the spirit. He stepped closer, too close, feeling the cold radiate like a winter grave. You were a guard, a soldier, someone who believed in duty. But this isn't duty. It's torture. The watchman's fingers twitched. Then something strange happened. The fog thinned, revealing dozens of faint silhouettes emerging from the darkness. Prisoners from different eras. Military inmates. Men in tattered uniforms. Men in striped prison clothing. They formed a circle around Holt's spirit. Elias realized he wasn't alone. The dead had come to witness. Stroud stepped forward, his ghost trembling. Not with fear, but hope. "He can release us," Stroud whispered. "But he won't unless someone reminds him he's human." Elias turned slowly back toward the watchman. "Edwin Holt," he said firmly, "this is your final shift. You can step down." The wind howled across the yard, cold enough to slice through bone. The watchman's uniform flickered between pristine and torn, like two timelines fighting for dominance. Then his voice came, hollow, broken. "I never meant to be forgotten." Elias felt tears sting his eyes. "You weren't forgotten. You were feared. But you can choose something else now." The island held its breath. A long, trembling silence followed. Then the watchman lowered his head. The fog around him loosened, unraveling like threads in the wind. His shadow shrank slowly until it became the faint outline of a man, not a monster. "Halt! Duty relieved," Holt whispered. The prisoners' spirits bowed their heads. One by one, they dissolved into the wind, freed from the cycle. The watchman looked at Elias one last time. His face softened, no longer hollow, but tired, impossibly tired. "Thank you," he murmured. Then he vanished. The fog thinned. The cold lifted. The island fell silent, truly silent, for the first time in decades. Elias stood alone, but not afraid. He returned to the mainland that night with a truth no tourist would ever hear, a truth no history book would record. Alcatraz had been haunted, but not anymore. And somewhere in the shifting fog behind him, the island finally exhaled.